Take a knee.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. I'm skipping the comments right now. We're going to go to public comment. So this is going to be a time for anyone that would like to speak that is not on an agenda item. So if you, this is just for general public comment that is not specific to an agenda item. Do we have any general public comment? We're still waiting for the mic. There we go. Okay. So no general public comment. I will close the public comment and go to approval of the action minutes.
I move we approve the action minutes of the June 28th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay.
I'm abstaining just since I wasn't here last.
And we'll go to the Robin preliminary plats. Make a couple comments before we go to the preliminary plats. The Planning Commission is tasked by the city subdivision ordinance to conduct a public hearing on proposed preliminary plats that have been found to be complete by the Community Development Department. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission is required to review the proposed preliminary plat and provide comments and make recommendations regarding the plat to the Community Development Director. The Planning Commission does not approve or reject the proposed preliminary plat, but merely provides comments or recommendations based on the public hearing and the Planning Commission's review of the proposed preliminary plat. With that being said, Kathy or Robin?
Excuse me, can you tell me who made the motions for the minutes?
Oh, I made the motion.
And I second it.
Okay, that's fine. I was walking, so.
Do you want to flip back to the...
I will, yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Okay, we have two preliminary plats to be reviewed tonight. The first is located at 13525 Holly Road and Arnold Mill Road. And you can see the plat outlined in red on your screen. And
our computers aren't on.
oh, Robin.
Yeah, we can do it from the paperwork, but. We can do it. We can do the paperwork.
Okay, well, go ahead and continue.
But why don't I just continue, and hopefully Robin will catch up with this. And essentially, you're looking at four lots that are going to be developed here. Let's see. The applicant is Penn Hodge. The total acreage is 36.09 acres. The parcel is zoned AG1. Currently, there's a single-family residence and two barns on the site. And the proposal is to develop 3 additional homes for a total of 4 house lots. And the applicant, if I can speak for him, intends in the future to not only develop these lots into large lots, but also to meet the threshold, the 5-acre minimum threshold, so as he would be eligible for TDR sales on these lots. And let's see. That is essentially it. Well, let's see, and so essentially just to end, based on the submittal site plans and supplemental information, the proposed preliminary plat meets the requirements of the applicable city codes as they pertain to the development of this property.
Is there any public comment on this one?
There is not.
Okay.
The applicant is here if you have any questions for the applicant. So.
Does anyone have any questions? This is pretty straightforward.
David didn't tell me how I asked.
For staff, is that
gravel road private or public? I mean, who maintains it?
Holly,
Oh, yeah, in Holly. Is that a private gravel road? Or is that maintained by the city?
public.
It's public, and the
But I
applicant
think there's
responded to that,
just
too.
right away on the adjacent to his land, and then there's a road right before you get to it, so.
I thought there was a gravel road through the,
There's
The
one through it
property.
as well,
there's a,
right? There's
yeah.
part of it's asphalt and part of it's gravel on the, what's depicted on the,
Okay.
Flat.
Well, we can have the applicant's
Yeah, the
engineer
applicant can
address that.
address that.
okay.
So, if you want to.
Hi,
Good evening. How are
how's
you?
it going?
Good,
Penn
thanks.
Hodge here. So, question is,
If you'll just state your name and address for the
it's
record.
Penn Hodge, I'm 13525 Holly Road, Milton.
Thank you.
New resident, love it here.
Thanks. What was the question again?
Is that a privately maintained gravel road, or is that maintained by the
Holly
city of
is
Milton?
you got a right-of-way there that is a public right-of-way that the city's taken position. They want to keep it a public right-of-way. Some of it is in use, some of it's not in use. I think they want to retain it for when the landfill becomes a city park for potential, I guess, trails. Is that right? I think trails. I don't think they want to activate it for a road, but also Old Chadwick Road is also a public road, still public right-of-way. They want to retain that as well. It's very overgrown. It's not really being used, but that kind of is on the eastern flank of the landfill.
Okay.
So I'm confused. The way I thought this ran was Holly Road is over here to our right, correct? Kathy, can you speak to that? Holly Road is depicted on the right-hand side of the map?
It runs parallel to Arnold Mill.
So Arnold Mill is the western part of this parcel, and Holly Road is the eastern part of
Yes,
the parcel.
correct, that's correct.
Okay, so perpendicular to that, depicted on here is an asphalt road, and there's also a gravel component. It looks like the gravel starts and stops somewhere just to the west of Track 1, where below the proposed five-bedroom house.
Yeah, so the asphalt road leads to where I live, the house that's been erected, the one of the four houses. And by the way, this tract had an LDB pulled prior to the creation of City of Milton for 37 lots. So, I mean, I could build 37 homes there if I'd like, based on, what it was zoned for or permitted for, 10 years ago.
And we're delighted that you're
Well,
thinking
thank
about
you.
something.
Thank you.
This is exactly what...
Hope these transfer development rights are actually worth something. So,
And this is exactly the direction we're hoping Milton's going to go. When we've got larger tract landowners like yourself, this is
Right.
exactly what our vision is for
Right.
trying to make sure that we maintain the rural and
Right.
pastoral land. So we really applaud your effort to
Right.
do that. So just to continue the thought of the asphalt versus the gravel. So as this is developed and the other lot sites are eventually built, will that road stay gravel and the part that's currently depicted as gravel?
honestly, it'd probably be a decision between the city and what happens to Holly Road that's now, for all practical purposes, been abandoned, but the city wants to maintain it as a right-of-way.
Okay, so with the execution of this property plan, with this platting, I guess maybe it's a clarification for staff. Right now, the landowner owns the road, and it's going to become a city road?
Actually, the city still owns the roadbed on the right-of-way. They own the right-of-way still for Holly Road as well as Old Chadwick Road.
Okay, but I'm not, this is where I'm getting confused again. So I'm not talking about Holly Road. Holly Road is the eastern boundary, correct?
Well, the asphalt road initially tracks Holly Road and then veers off onto where my house is. So
Yes.
it's not only on public right-of-way, but then it veers off into private land.
Okay, so is that street then considered Holly that's asphalt going into the...
Some of it is, but then it does track the right-of-way of Holly Road, but then you will actually look at the survey, you'll see where the old Holly Road right-of-way extends more directly. It backs up to all those houses in Providence Lakes. So, we collectively, maybe 2 years ago when I initially bought this tract, went to the city and asked for an abandonment of Holly Road, and the city made it real clear they didn't want to abandon it. They wanted to continue to maintain that right-of-way for the future advent of when the landfill becomes a city park.
Okay.
So Paul, where I'm pointing is, there's not, when you asked whether there was a road there.
See it. We can't see it.
Okay. I don't know how to solve that problem.
Well, so just describing it again, Robin. So it looks like the asphalt component of it comes to an end below the proposed 5-acre or 5-bedroom home. Here, let me show you. So that's Holly, right?
Yes.
Correct.
This
And then,
driveway goes along the property line of Holly. That's
okay. So what I'm asking for clarification on is this road that comes in here is asphalt, it looks like, to here.
Right,
And then
that's
and then it goes gravel beyond that, all the way over to Arnold Mill.
Right, and that's to satisfy the requirements of a subdivision.
Okay.
But it'll be a private, once it gets off, it will not be, it's intended to be private.
Which one?
Who maintains it?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's where I was trying to go.
Okay, it's private.
It's private now.
Well, I mean, it doesn't exactly exist that way, correct, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Holly Road, right now, the confines on the survey is public right-of-way. So it continues to be public right-of-way. You can kind of see on the survey where it diverts into land that's private land. So
But the internal road,
it's still private.
right, is still
Right.
private. And then based on our requirements, we had to have a wider right-of-way. A utility. Egress.
Right, right.
So that's just to be able to meet the subdivision regulations, the internal, private road. It couldn't just be a gravel driveway because it's more than 3 lots.
Right. Okay, so here's where I'm trying to go with this. Is I'm unclear, or I was unclear when I was interpreting this, and you're trying to help me get there, but I'm still not clear yet, is between Holly Road today and Arnold Mill, it appears that there is some degree of connectivity. Part of it's asphalt, part of it's gravel.
Correct.
Okay,
There's a spine road that we built that runs from Arnold Mill back to Holly Road.
okay. So today, is that combination road, part of which is asphalt, part of which is gravel, public or private?
Well, look at it this way. I think the way we have these 4 lots planned is all of them are on public right-of-way.
Okay,
Holly Road is a public right-of-way.
Yes.
Arnold Mill is a public right-of-way. So between 4 lots, all of them are located on public right-of-ways. Does that make
But
sense?
You're asking about the spine
Well,
road.
you do have an internal spine road that connects all 4 lots.
Yes.
But that's kind of irrelevant because all 4 lots face public right-of-way.
Is your question going to be, is that going to be accessible to the public?
that's ultimately where I'm going, and who's going to maintain it? Is it a part,
I
can
would
it be a part of our trail plan?
I would say no.
It's not going to be
No,
accessible to the
because I
public.
think, hey, I've got 3 kids. I'm going to have 4 lots. Each one can have a choice of living there or not living there.
Okay,
If they don't, that's okay,
okay. If it's private today,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have any right to take that to
Right.
make it a public road, and that's where I'm just trying to get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
But if it is public road today, and it's going to become private, then it's a whole different
I think
conversation.
there's a lot of wonky issues that relate to the subdivision ordinance that we kind of had to work around, but I think the fact that Holly Road is a public right-of-way and Arnold Mill is a public right-of-way, and all 4 lots front a public right-of-way, it meets the regulations for the subdivision.
So will all 4 driveways how many driveways are there going to be?
If we execute all four, it'll be 4 driveways off of public right-of-way.
Okay, so the internal road really is immaterial?
It's irrelevant.
Okay, great, because it's private.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry it took so long to get there.
Any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions? Fred?
Well, that was one of my key questions. Long-range plan. As I see this, the possibility of maybe with all the buffers, 4, 5 more homes that could be built in that area?
Actually, we were zoned for, there was an LDP pulled, before the creation of Milton for 37 homes here, based on, agriculture,
Right.
whatever zoning.
Yeah, the AG one's fine.
The Milton's a different deal than when Fulton County was around, but there was an existing LDP for 37 homes here.
Right.
A question for staff. So does this, we bump into some of those issues we talked about before with distance from, for the fire department from the roadway? Are all those kinds of things resolved?
They're all resolved. It wouldn't come here unless they were all resolved.
You good? Any other questions? Just want to say thank you. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
All right. Next one.
And you need to put back up we're trying to get this too.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for coming. Okay, great.
Pass me a pen, Fred. Pardon? Pen. There we go. All right.
Okay, ready? We have our next subdivision plan. It's 870, 900, 980, and 1070 Mayfield Road. And this is what I refer to fondly as the Mayfield Pond property. And you see it outlined in red here along Mayfield Road. And this is the subdivision plan, which I will come back in a minute, but let me just give you some description of what this plan entails. Let's see. Taylor Morrison is the applicant. It's 16.923 acres. It's within the Crabapple Form-Based Code. Part of it is Zone T2, which is suitable for civic space, and T4 and T4 open. And let me just expand a little on the suitable for civic space. When we created the Form-Based Code for Crabapple, we identified the lake area as a potential site for a public park. And in order to encourage a would-be developer to carry out that vision, we did, and this is the only site in all of our form-based codes where we did overlay on it the ability to receive TDRs. So in effect, it is a sending site. All our other sending sites are in the AG1 area. But we did create this as a sending site, and we gave it a premium on it as well to encourage it to be developed as a sending site for TDRs to incorporate that vision of a public park. So having said that, let me just continue along in here. Right now, the existing use is for 2 homes and a pond. The applicant is proposing 69 homes. 28 would be single family and 41 would be townhomes. Plus there's a commercial lot totaling 0.723 acres. So let me go back to the site plan so I can explain a little of this to you. So you see in the front on Mayfield, the pond, and that area essentially is zoned T2. Do you have your screens up now?
We do.
Okay, so I can point and you'll see this. So the T2 line, you can follow my arrow, follows along, essentially along this way right there. So everything in the front is T2. And then in the back, we have the T4 and the T4 open. In this area here, you see the single-family house lots. And then over here, you see the townhomes. Now, in addition, they do own the parcel to the west of what will be the proposed alignment for Charlotte Drive extension, and that is over here. And we have worked with the developer to have him designate that as a mixed-use zoning parcel, a mixed-use parcel, as opposed to using it for townhomes. So the idea is that we have kept all the townhomes and the residential to the east side of what will be Charlotte Drive extension. Okay, so having said that, there are a number of transfer of development right credits, TDR credits, that go along with this parcel here. The developer is developing this using not only by right, but using the TDR cap of 9 units per acre. So his density meets our requirements. We're capped at 9 units per acre, and he represents 9 units per acre here with the combination of single family and townhomes. When we originally evaluated this site, we did not feel that there were as many, that the yield of TDRs, the developer became short in the sense that he would have to go out and buy some other TDRs, because he can certainly transfer the TDRs from the T2 site, which is a sending site, onto the rear, which is a receiving site. But he was short some. However, further discussion with staff and with the developer, we feel that we can reinterpret the yield on this to allow him, with the combination of some density from his mixed-use parcel plus the TDR yield from here, that he will not have to go out to buy additional TDRs. In return, the developer is prepared to not only give the city the parcel of land for public park, which is what we'd always had wanted, but he will also construct it. So he is prepared to dredge the lake, landscape around the lake, fix the dam, which we already know, we've already had an estimate because the first developer through was not going to do that. So we know it's a very high cost to fix that dam. Plus, he is prepared to put sidewalks along the front of the parcel that will tie in with our sidewalks that we're constructing further down. So there will be a connection for the neighborhood to tie up right down to Charlotte. In addition, he is prepared at no cost to the city to dedicate a half-acre worth of land, which is the future right-of-way for the beginning of the extension of Charlotte Drive. We are able to create this park in a very short time frame. It will be dedicated to the city as a public land, constructed using our plans in terms of what we want it to look like, as well as the sidewalks, as well as the right-of-way. And essentially, that's the plan. And the applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
Kathy,
Yes.
the roundabout,
Yes.
that still is up in the air, correct?
No, it's being designed. We have the money under
Property has been
T-Splosh.
purchased.
Pardon me?
All the property has been purchased to
Well,
allow that to go through.
We've done the survey. We're now doing the design, and then according to our Public Works Director, once the design is done, then we will send out letters to the owners, and we have talked to most of the owners. There's one that we haven't re-engaged with, although we had earlier in the process, but we feel that we pretty much have the buy-in of all the owners along that road, going from the Charlotte roundabout up to the Birmingham one, for them to dedicate the right-of-way to us. And so we have been working very hard to put that in place.
Hypothetically,
Pardon me?
hypothetically, if the roundabout, for some reason, did not occur, we have one entryway in and out of this location, which means that if you say, I'm going to average 2 cars per home, that's 130 automobiles a day that's going to come in and out of this subdivision
Before we,
because they have no other way.
can we get some public comment before we get into the question and answering stuff? Is that, are y'all okay with that? Getting some- yeah,
Sure.
okay. But I know we discussed, should we have the developer come up and present, and then we'll have public comment?
Okay,
Okay.
and they're here. Ken and Thad and Thad. Remember, this is Ken Wood. And Thad is Higgins is from Taylor Morrison. So he's the engineer, he's the developer.
Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. And getting used to your new systems is really, really nice. I just wanted to make sure, what can you guys see as far as if I'm pointing? Do I need to use a board? Or you be able to see?
They can see this, and you can use this pointer
Okay.
to,
What's up on the screen now
point.
that I've
Is there a way to
figured out
rotate
perfect
that?
monitors.
can you rotate that?
If there's not, that's fine. I just wanted to
PDF,
see.
no,
Okay.
not on the,
No worries. So in looking at some of the questions, the way the site sets up is we're lining up the driveway here, coming off of Mayfield, and as you said, the pond will be rejuvenated. It's got a really bad situation with the dam currently. When you drive by there, it looks like if it's a heavy rain, it looks like it's just going to come in your car. And so redoing the dam, making it level there, we're finishing. This is the kind of the loop vision of that trail, the 8-foot trail that goes along Mayfield and loops all the way up by the school. This would bring in, we're finishing that along the front, and with the idea that the dam would feel very level, with the roadway as part of this. And as you enter into the property, what we talked about as you go across that first creek, we're kind of creating as part of the culvert like a faux look for a bridge with like some columns as we go across. And then as you enter into the community from Mayfield, that's where you have the single family detached that are rear loaded that kind of run through that part of the community. Sidewalks on the sides, we have parking on one side of the road, so it's going to have that really crabapple feel to the community as you run through there. And then all of the townhomes, some of them face the road, but a lot of them face open space as you run through that middle section. And then as you come back out, I heard the question about the roadway. And so whether the roundabout is there or not, we still control all of that land. So we would still be putting a road that would tie in. So today, while we're there before the roundabout is there, it would be a roadway just with your typical, radiuses and everything tying in into a 4-way intersection. But the only difference would be is that 4-way would essentially be without a roundabout until that time that it would come in. But we would still be finishing that connection so that we would have a second access point coming into our property from there. And we've spent a lot of time, Thad has spent a lot of time with Bob going over different type of elements for the architecture. So all the architecture works out. We've given extra room to a lot of the end of the buildings for giving extra room from the setbacks and the property lines so that he can, as he likes to say, tinkle in a lot of the different architecture elements that would come onto the building. And really with that, I mean, they're excited about the project because the way it works out is there's a great public use, and so it really will accentuate that whole frontage of our project because the way the townhomes and everything sets up, everything orients toward that lake. So the lake is really the big driving factor, and also the walkability to the area. And with that, I can take any questions you guys may have.
Well, I want to do a public comment right
Oh, okay.
after that, and then we'll have do questions.
Okay.
What public comment do we have?
okay, I have Robin Frickton.
Good evening. I'm Robin Frickton, live at 2970 Francis Road in Milton. My comment is, what's going to happen to all the trees? Are we clear cutting everything? Is there a tree inventory been done? My next door neighbor was trying to have some land, was going to build a house. The arborist came out and said that tree was going to cost them $35,000 to cut. So I'm real curious what's happening to all the trees there. I'm hoping the trees around the lake will be left alone, and we'll have that. I've seen the land. I've taken pictures of stuff. Yeah, some of it's kind of scruffy, but there's a lot of trees. If you look at at Google from above, it's a pretty thick forest in there. So I'm just kind of curious, are we clear cutting it? How much of the trees are we saving? What kind of inventory have we done on the trees? Are there any heritage, any old trees in there? Just kind of curious what we're doing. Is the city going to get any money towards a tree fund for this? A lot of questions you guys have already kind of answered that I had. One question, are there going to be any street lights at the entrances? As you mentioned, there's going to be 130 cars or more coming and going through there. It looks like it's going to be a great shortcut that I could go through to get over here. I was just in the traffic and the light was, everything was kind of slow. So it looked like if I can cut through there, that'd be great. I don't need to go through any of the lights or the roundabouts whenever they're done. Because I'm assuming it's not gated. And they won't mind people using that as a shortcut. So, that'd be great. My assumption is there's sewage, right? I didn't see anything about septic tanks or anything about sewage, but I'm assuming there's sewage. But one question that I'm really concerned about is where's all the water going to go when it rains? That's 16 acres, and probably, I guess half of it maybe is going to be saved. I don't know. But now you're going from raw land, trees, water being sucked into the ground to roofs, parking lots, the whole bit. And I saw something on the plan that said that the lake, the dam and everything was going to be worked on to handle some of the water, I guess, coming from the parking lot. So I'm just kind of curious, how much water are we talking about? That's a lot of land, a lot of open roofs and stuff, and even though sometimes we have our droughts, but we also have our monsoons at times. So where's the water going to go? Is it going in the sewer? Is it going in the roads? Is the dam going to handle it all? I'm just kind of curious about all that because that's a lot of water. Where I live. Luckily, knock on wood, we don't have any real problems. We got around Francis, it's a lot of land, so we don't worry too much about the rain. But around here, you got all the parking lots. Traffic's already bad. You don't want any flooding on the roads, flooding of people downstream from the subdivision, because I know that there's a dam, and on the other side, I guess there's a creek, or not really a creek, there's a dry bed, and some water sitting in it. So I guess it only fills up when it's raining, but now you're talking, all these parking lots and roofs and stuff. So how bad will it get for the people downstream? Will there be, is there going to be parking available for people to use the lake? Or are we looking at having to walk from here to get over there? Just kind of curious about that. And there was some mention, I think I saw on the drawing, something about a stormwater facility. What is that about? Is that handling the water? Is that going to be dumped into the sewers? But stormwater, around here, it could be a big concern, holding up slowing down the traffic even worse. One thing, too, about the lights with the schools all around, the word's going to get out that they got a new shortcut now. And so that's why one reason you may need lights there to handle some of that whenever the roads get done. But other than that, I'm just sort of having questions. You can't stop progress. if we want to build it all up and grab apple, that's fine with me. I'm way on the other side, so it won't hit me too much, except when I come over here to these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next, I think it's Carol Roberts? Craig, I'm sorry. I couldn't read this. Sorry. Craig.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Craig Roberts. I live in Danbury Park across the street. I'm not speaking in opposition. I don't oppose this project.
Oh, you just state me your address.
4080 Dodds Grove Lane.
Thank you.
Just a couple things I'd like to make sure of. As we come out Danbury Park at Bascom Farm, during traffic it can be quite difficult to make a left there. So I'd like to see how the roads align with each other, or if they align, are we going to be crossing each other as we try to turn left? As we add more traffic, will this be an opportunity to complete the sidewalks from Freemanville up to Birmingham, which we've been trying for years? It's an odd boundary line with Milton and Alpharetta, but as we add this traffic and more pedestrians, the lack of sidewalks there with the library, just watching two young mothers push strollers through dirt yesterday is concerning, and I'm hoping this is finally what we need to have that accomplished. If I understand correctly, the back end of this property will include walkthrough to the middle and high school, if that's correct. Will there be crosswalks available crossing over Mayfield Road for young students in that area? If so, Mayfield Road comes at an incline. We're very appreciative that the speed limit dropped recently from 45 to 35. Thank you for that, but still people are coming up there at a pretty good clip when there's not traffic. So hopefully there's good lighting there as well. But that's the main thing that are my concerns, to see that these sidewalks are finally included in this project, so that we can hopefully eliminate some of the car traffic as well. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
I think we can have the come up and address.
Any other public comment?
And I just want to make
Y'all public comment? Bring it on up.
We didn't fill in because we didn't know.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, we just did it. Come on up.
Can I announce your name first?
Yes.
Okay. Nancy Daniels.
My name's Nancy Daniels. I live across the street as well in Danbury Park, 4025 Dodds Grove Lane. And my biggest concern is the traffic. It literally, we left at 5:45 today. We're right down the road. You saw us walk in a couple minutes late. I mean, I don't understand how all these homes that they're building and then the townhouses, the roads are going to withstand it, even with the roundabouts that put in. So one of my concerns was there a traffic study done and how that will affect getting out of our subdivision now to go left into the area is a nightmare. In the morning it's bad because of the schools going right, and now they're going to take and put, from what I understand with the drawings, right across the street from us is the entrance to that. I'm not sure, and you might have answered this already, if there's another entrance being planned for entrance and exit for that whole area or not. So that's one of our main concerns. The other one is, if kids are going to be walking through that subdivision to get to these schools, I understand we're not in the Milton area, but people from our subdivision will definitely cross over, and it will be so dangerous if there's not some type of crosswalk put in. And, it's dangerous now with no sidewalks. We see what happens all the time trying to get up to this area. And again, I understand we're a little bit different because of where we are and the way the boundaries are, but safety is a huge concern as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It will be Nicole Varr.
I'm Nicole Varr. I'm at 12822 Waterside Drive. Traffic, obviously an issue. But my question is, how close are the townhomes to the back of the elementary school? If I'm understanding the plans, I think that that backs up to it, and I'm just concerned about how close that is, if there's safety concerns with our school, with the townhomes that close to them. Also, how long will it take to develop? Because when the development's happening, that will impact traffic as well. And there was mention of a commercial property. I was wondering what that would be and where that's located in the plans as well.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Tara Taverbaugh.
Hi, I'm Tara Taverbaugh. I live in Danbury Park across the street, 3055 Greens Creek Lane. The concerns of the others are also my concerns, but I wanted to add that behind our neighborhood is a floodplain, and so Craig mentioned the water, but it's a pretty big concern, all the runoff coming, because right now it is absorbed in the lake. I was very kind of disappointed to hear the beavers were going to be gone and the lake gone. It's been there forever. And I've kind of grown up in this area. I've lived here since the 80s. So to me, clear-cutting property is really not a crabapple feel to me. So I just wanted to voice that concern. But schools, the tree buffer to the schools is an issue. Is there a tree buffer, or will it be clear-cut up to the fence? How are the students supposed to walk through the schools? Is the trail, it looks like it's through the elementary school, so that is a concern for safety. And also I want to voice my concern as well about a crosswalk for the kids and a light. Again, can't turn left pretty much unless it's after 10 o'clock in the morning or before 3. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Ellen Farrell.
Hi, I'm Ellen Farrell. I also live in the Danbury Park neighborhood. I'm on 4060 Dodds Grove Lane. My concerns are exactly the same as everything you've already heard. I think the only thing I'd like to add is when we moved here, we loved being in this. We still love the area, but it's just, and personally for me, I find it sad with all the additions of neighborhoods and just taking away of the horse farms and the land, and it's just not the same place. And I understand that builders come in and they want to make their money, and I just don't understand how the towns keep allowing, 6 houses on 1 acre. It's supposed to be 1 house on 1 acre. So I just don't understand it personally, but I just want to voice my opinion. I just think it's horrible. And it's getting unlivable. You can't drive. There's nowhere to go. I can't turn right. I can't turn left. I live a stone's throw from the school. It takes me 15 minutes to get there. It's just crazy. And it's just disappointing. So that's it. That's just what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Laura Downs. And if anybody else has any more speaker cards, I'd be happy to take them.
Hi, I'm Laura Downs, and I live at 13260 Bethany Road. And my concern is I try to avoid Mayfield Road when the traffic is so bad. I actually will go all the way down to Rucker and try to make my commute that way. So obviously the traffic is a huge concern. But one of the biggest is what precedents are we setting? Of course, you have the commercial and high density here, but once you cross over Birmingham, Road, then what's to stop it? Is all of Mayfield, is it going to become high density as well? And I agree with the previous person that spoke. When we voted in for the city of Milton, we were told that it was going to be 1 house per acre, and it was going to be rural horse farms. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem the case. It seems like developers can do what they want, but as a person, I don't have a large acreage, almost 3 acres, but yet if I wanted to put townhomes on my property, would I be given as much leeway as the developers are? And the traffic is so bad, and I live on the pretty road, where there's larger acreage. And unfortunately, again, I don't own the large acreage. I wish I did. But we have trees, and we're told that we can only do certain things if we want to sell our property, but yet it seems like, concessions are made for developers. And one, I traveled the road, on occasion and going to Kroger when it's not traffic hours, and I never saw when the zoning was changed from AG1 to what it is now. I assume it was AG1 at one point, and I never saw that notice. So again, I just kind of feel like it's been thrown under the rug and we have this development to face. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Robin?
Yes, that's it.
All right, so I'll close the public comment. We obviously have a lot of questions that were asked from the community, so I'm assuming y'all can answer a lot of those before we ask staff.
Yeah, I wrote down just about everything, so I'll try to take in some order. Kind of one of the first things I would look at is, and I know, all these things, new development is hard, especially, into communities. And so there's so many different conceptions about how it comes about and different things. For this site in this area, Crabapple, at least as far as I've known the vision of this area, the walkability, the kind of the homes with the rear loaded, being able to get to the schools, the retail services and stuff, kind of that node that has sewer has been kind of envisioned, and then outside of the sewer it transitions to very, very rural. And so we really feel like the plan, and as I go through some of these answers, that what we're bringing to the table is in very much keeping with what that vision is, and then some of the concerns they have, I think, will be satisfied by what we're actually bringing in that aren't there today. And so kind of going through some of those, the first thing that came up was the trees. And so we definitely have, if you're looking at the plan, a lot of the area up here by the house where it is already cleared today. If you go up there today and you go across the back behind the lake, it's a cleared area. A lot of the trees around the lake will be saved, especially all up in this area, around to the drive-in. We will be clearing for the dam reconstruction. It is a bad situation. The dam is in disrepair. It's a bad situation, and so the trees in that area definitely need to be pulled out and taken care of. And so because they're creating some issues with seepage and everything, but so a lot of the cluster of the middle of the project, there will be quite a bit of tree save, as well as the back through here and the back through here. Like I said, this is kind of cleared here already. When you're looking at the townhome section, yes, there will be clearing of trees in this area. And then with the new roadway going through, it will be cleared in that area. But the majority of the frontage of everybody that spoke from here, the integrity of those trees would remain in place with the new revitalized lake that will be re-landscaped in there. One other question that came up was about the street lights. We'll have all new street lights to the Milton standards, and so they would be at the entrances, they would be along the frontage, they would be along the roads. So as you're looking at the plan, the road that would come here and run through here and then run also all the way back out to here and all this, that all would be public roads. So we would build that to public road standards. It would have parking on one side of the road for parallel parking all along it, as well as the drive. And so it would have your street lights and street trees all along there. And so from a term of safety and lighted and visibility, it would be to new standards, as you see kind of surrounding you around here when you walk outside. The other thing that came out was about the roads and the alignment. And so we line up with Basecom Farm Drive, and I believe that's where Danbury was across. And so that alignment would have sidewalks on both sides as we're running up through there into the development, at all the new street lights and everything as we're going through there. And one thing that we're excited about, there was a question about the traffic, is with the new road coming in, this project actually will have the viability to have 3 different connections. And so the road that would run through what I used to call Strawberry Fields, they all have different names, but the Strawberry Fields that run out, as well as a connection back to Mayfield and then further down on Mayfield. And so the interconnectivity of that is what we love and see has come to the forefront of it. We are going to be required to do some road improvements on our site. The roundabout is obviously a big deal. That's already in the works. I've been talking to Sarah Leaders, your transportation engineer, and Carter about that, and they've already advanced the plans to us. And so that seems to be moving very rapidly as part of the project. And so that improvement, as well as on our frontage on Mayfield, will trigger the left turn lanes there. And so we'll be able to clear the lanes so that we're not clogging traffic trying to get into our development from that standpoint. The next question that came up was about water runoff from the area. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits. So right now, where the houses are sitting up on the hill, it's all cleared, and you have the pond that's in disrepair. Now the pond is doing some sort of a job in that when it runs off the back of the school, it is coming in and it's getting captured by the lake, but the lake is deceiving. It's only about 4.5 to 5 feet deep when we did our bathymetric study on it and topoed the bottom of it. So what we're proposing on this is we'll be detaining for more of a regional solution. Now we're doing all of our water quality and environmental measures on our site with infiltration and swells, which, you know, the one and the smaller rainfalls probably won't discharge because we'll be capturing those and they'll be treated with water quality. But the larger rain events that come into the lake, those are going to be held and released from the lake at a lower rate than it is today. And so what we're doing, not only are we fixing the dam of the lake, we're actually excavating. So we're putting about 3 times the volume into that lake that is there today. And so there'll be a lot more volume. And so that volume is what equals the area protection, right? The floodplain protection, because we're going to have a lot more area to hold and release that water at a slower rate, essentially is what it is. So runoff from the site is a big deal. You know, Carter has a lot of restrictions about how we deal with that. And so this lake is a big key in terms of runoff. That's a big part of this. The other thing that came out was the sewers. None of it is going to the sewers. We'll only be using sanitary sewer going to the sewer. So there's not going to be any of the storm water that would be going to the sewer system. The question came up about can people use the lake? Is there enough parking? Is it, you know, all that use? Will it be something that could be used? The question came up. And so it is being dedicated to the city once we finish it as a public park, and so it would be open to the community. And the road that borders it that we're going to be putting in, that is a public road, and that has parallel parking all up and along it. And so there would be public parking for this site day one when we're finished with our construction. And so the answer to that is yes, it is public, and yes, we would have parking available to it day one. The other thing that came up is about the Danbury Park, and if the roads do align, they do align exactly across from each other, so there's no offset from those roads. And then the other thing was talked about the sidewalks and the different programs. So we're finishing all of the sidewalks that we have under control of ours. And then the biggest thing that we're finishing is the connection for people to get to the school in an easier way, a non-traffic related way. I heard a lot of comments about the amount of time it takes traffic to get around the area. So all of these roads and the sidewalks are going to be public. So if you lived across the street, we will put in a crosswalk. You could cross Mayfield, walk up the sidewalks, and then walk on that sidewalk and get into the school property without getting in your car. And so we feel is a huge benefit to the site. It would be light, you know, obviously, depending on the time of year, you know, before time sets back, there would be street lights and stuff. So even if it's early in the morning, depending on if it's middle school or if it's elementary school, there would be street lights, but definitely in the afternoon, obviously, in sunlight hours. But that will be there. It will be public, and it would be dedicated to the city for that use. The other thing that came up was the floodplain in the neighborhood, and that the lake will go away. I think the comment was, I don't want the lake to go away. It's kind of nestled in there. And so we're not taking, I want to make sure everybody understands, we're not taking away the lake, we're fixing it. We're fixing it, and we're going to make it a deeper, lake that actually will be more aesthetic and actually a lake that you could get to. So our job will be to preserve as much of the trees as we can, but we have to fix the dam and then dig it out and give it more volume. So it'll not only be more aesthetic, but it'll also have floodplain prevention built into it a lot more than it does today going on to it. And I think, unless you guys can, the only other thing that was brought up is about concessions to the developers. And I mean, we have to play under the same rules, in the city of Milton. This has been envisioned for a long time, and it's taken a long time to figure out how to, make a public entity be able to afford the cost of creating a new lake, coordinate the roadway and everything going through. And so we're just kind of fulfilling kind of what that vision is for the homes. And then the last thing that I have written down is that the single-family homes are the ones that are the closest to the school. When you get down to where the townhomes are, you only have about 125-foot section before it goes to that next property. So the majority of the property, the single-family and the alley from the single-family backs up to the school. You've got two sets of townhomes that turn sideways, and so the townhomes don't have their backyard or their front facing the school. And these are, anticipated to be, these are really nice homes. They're townhomes, but they will be fee simple. They will have their own lot. They are not cheap, and so they will be, done to Bob's standards, which are, as you guys know, they'll be very aesthetic and very nice. And so, the homes that are sitting there are turned sideways purposely so that we have a rear alley for the single-family detached, and then the townhomes are sideways to the school, so you don't have anything glaring over, facing at the school. And with that, I can answer any questions from you guys, or if I'm forgetting one that I didn't happen to write down, I can answer that as well.
All right, questions for staff? I guess I'll take just one generic stab just to answer. When was this all rezoned, Kath? It's like 6 years ago? Is that about right? When we did the crabapple formation?
It was in 2012.
Okay. Just want to make sure we had that. All right.
How many parking spaces are going to be on the street? About 12?
No, if you look throughout the entire community, I would say there's probably upwards of 50.
For public? For
They're all the roads are public, and so all the parallel spots are open to the public.
I think most of the people who live there will take most of them.
Yeah. Yeah. When they'll have visitors and stuff. we have.
I'm getting at how much. I don't live there, so how much access am I going to really have? How many access to the 30,000 people in Milton that don't live there are going to have access to this park?
The big thing to look at is if you look at that entry road, it's almost 800 feet before you reach a home across that connection. So if you we start parking about 100 feet in, and so 700 feet at 22 spaces, it's quite a bit of parking that'll be there. It's probably upwards of 25-ish, I bet, on that one side. And then, depending on what happens, I can't speak for the city, but early on, there was talks about adding, different, pavilions and more parking. And
right.
So I think there's a bigger vision, to this park. But day one, we're going to have quite a bit of parking for the access to that park as well.
Yeah. If I can just add, the original plan was to, once the city took it over, to consider adding some additional parking so that people could come and park and enjoy the park without having to parallel park. It would be a parking lot, and we actually have plans that show that. As well as in the past, we've had thoughts of putting a pavilion there or an amphitheater or something. So I think the idea is to grow this park sequentially once the developer turns it over.
I got a bunch. No, y'all can go ahead and go.
Okay. First, a question for Kathy. With the parkland that's going to be remaining, if the developer is going to give to the city, how does that acreage compare to what the original park plan acreage was on the visioning study for the area? How does the total acreage compare?
It's the same. It's exactly the same. It's the T2 area, which is, if you look at the the map of Crabapple, you'll see that whole front area is green. It's Zone T2 with crosshatching, and that was the area we identified as a civic space.
So does this plan give the city any reason to pause about some of the amenities that were planned for that park, or all those amenities that were at one point contemplated still on the table?
The amenities that were originally contemplated were all to be constructed and built by the city.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're layering here, where we're getting a big chunk of it literally from the developer, and then we would add on. And Bob has worked on some plans. But parking is certainly something, like a gravel parking area, for instance, something soft. And then we had looked at, he really wants a covered bridge. So, things like that, a little pavilion or a dock into the water. We would build off of the trails that are being constructed so that it could be a nice passive park for mothers to come with their children and feed the ducks or just walk around, and it's quiet, a little solitude. The other thing that we love about it is the fact that it really is the entrance into Crabapple. And what a nicer way to give the image of Crabapple than to have this park with this lake established right there.
Okay, thank you. With your plan for this is a question for the developer, the plan for the sort of reclaiming of the lake, I guess. Do you have to drain the lake in order to do that?
We do. We'll have to. It has active streams coming into it, and so we'll need to divert that around temporarily while we work on the dam, and then to dredge it out.
That all stays within the property. It's just a matter of staging one part of the other.
It is. You have the intensive erosion control to keep everything in there and not lose any of the sediment while we're digging it out, and then we'll refinish it.
Okay. And that earth that is taken out of the bottom of the lake, where does that go? Is that used?
Depending on how it is, we have plenty of area around it that we can lay it out, and then they dry it, and then they can, put it on slopes and stuff. And then if it's too mushy, you just have to take it out of there and haul it away.
Okay. At one point, I think in your presentation, you talked about the dam level at some point being more in the same elevation as the road.
Similar. It'll be a couple of feet. Like right now, you drive by, it's
above you.
It's above,
yeah.
And it'll be a similar elevation, but it's going to be. We're making a much wider dam, and with the sidewalk, between where the water is and the sidewalk is, and it's about 50 feet, and so it's going to feel. Even though it does rise up that 3 or 4 feet, it'll feel perceptive-wise because 50 feet is from here to the back of it'll feel very like flat, and like the dam is part of just like an open field area.
Will it be the view from Mayfield? Will it be more just?
You'll be able to see the lake
area, or you see dam, you see concrete, and
no, I think you won't see concrete. You'll see we're not doing any like big concrete spillways and all that stuff. You'll see green. You'll see the sidewalk, the landscaping. You'll be able to see the vastness of the lake from there.
Okay. And are you working with the city on some of the trail plan things that were originally contemplated?
All of them.
Okay,
all of
so
them.
that all still is a benefit to us on that?
Right.
Okay. There was a lot of question from the community about the tree buffer. Mm-hmm. I know, obviously, with the dam area that needs to go because of the access to that. But can you address for me again, please, basically along the property lines that are not on the Mayfield roadway, what the tree buffer will look like?
Sure. So as best we can over here on this side of the lake where the buffer is, we don't have any excavation in this area planned. On each side of this, on the upper sides, this makes like a little island here. So we would maintain the trees in these areas. There would be all these trees on this upper end would remain, and so and then on this left side of property you would remain. So you're going to get oh no, hold on.
Just go back.
Yeah, feel good about that. All right, so all the trees around this area would remain on this back side. you have a couple little areas back here near the school that we'd be looking to maintain. And then, some small areas on here. When you're in with the new roadway and the townhomes in the middle, that would be the area that would be cleared and new landscaping would be brought in. And then where the single family is, a lot of that is already cleared, and so that would be new landscaping. So the vision from Mayfield, the homes would be, the homes are almost 800 feet back. And so the amount of foliage up there would be very much a lot of the existing foliage. As you get down to where the commercial area is in here, you would see these 6 townhomes because they'd be up on the road the same as these are right here in this little area.
Okay. And for the sake of just simplicity with getting orientation, if we consider the top of the map right now north,
okay,
no, that may not be the actual.
Gotcha.
The land that's just depicted as white area right there.
Right here.
Is that school property right there?
So the school runs there. So one of the large buildings is here. One of the other ones is here. And so the school runs to right here is the property line.
Okay.
And then this right here is the property that this road would split, which I believe is
Strawberry Fields.
Strawberry Fields.
That's private. That was sold.
It's
Well,
part of
about
this.
to, or maybe,
Or it's in
but I mean, it's
process.
in play.
They're trying to get it as part of the crowd, as the vision for the road and everything.
Okay. At one point, there was, I think, Kathy, on the plan, there was a road that was going to go up the back of the school property to connect into the high school roadway.
We still have the ability to do so. Our right-of-way, this public road here, up, and if you can see, this right-of-way would stop here. So if that ever came to fruition, you could just pick this road up and carry it right behind the school. So that's part of our plan as well.
So it would come off of your road rather
It
than
does.
off of Charlotte.
It is one. Now, my understanding is that there's another intersection, but yes, there would be the ability to come off of here as well as right here in our plan, going into this large 40-acre site. This is also a reservation for public right-of-way to come into the road there. And so as Crabapple is very intertwined with connectivity and everything, this would be the same way.
Okay.
It would set it up for the future in all directions.
Yeah, I know we're dealing with a lot of traffic issues right now in Crabapple, and obviously we're on the front end of what is the ultimate traffic plan and the traffic calming and the decompression of some of the traffic issues we've got today when some of these things are complete.
Yeah,
more
progress
roundabouts
is
and more
hard.
connectivity. So we're on the front end of that.
Yeah.
So although I'm hypersensitive to what the community is saying about those issues, I know from all of us having been engaged with this that there are other traffic calming things that will come with this, although we're obviously adding more volume with the homes. But one of the things that was expressed by the community tonight was the concern about the ability to get out of, and I'm forgetting the name of the subdivision.
Danbury?
Danbury. Yeah, Danbury Park. And that congestion that will until some of the other things are complete, that will likely back up to the area that they're concerned about. Is there a plan for improvement on Mayfield at that point? Will there be turn lanes added for right or left into either Danbury Park or into this new development?
We have to provide turn lanes.
So left and right?
I'm not sure on D-cell lane, but we're definitely triggering the left turn lane into our development, which is the more important. The
Okay,
D-cell is.
So Mayfield,
Sometimes D-cells are good because they make people slow down, but the left turn lane clears the lane.
So left turn lane meaning as you're going eastbound on
If
Mayfield?
we're traveling this way, and you could turn left into the development.
So there is a decel lane for that turn.
There will be.
Okay. Is there a corresponding decel lane for a left turn into the Danbury Park?
So as part of what we have to do in order to match it up, we have to build what's called a gore, which is that striping that you see. And Carter has brought it up before that most likely the city would look to figuring out how to make sure that's a left turn lane too.
Okay. think that does it. I have a question for staff. Kathy or Robin, I know this is T4 and T4 open. There is no change in what was contemplated with the original T4 and T4 open plan with this density. It meets the requirements of what we had currently
Correct.
have on the
change.
books. So if you could just clarify for me, with the TDR component of this, where there's a bonus because of the saving of the lake, is that actually then increasing the density in the T4 area?
Absolutely not. No, the maximum density, well, the density, there's 5 units to an acre by right, and then you could go up to 9 with TDRs.
Right.
And then that is it. It's capped at 9. And so they have capped it at 9 for the allowed density. Robin has done all the analysis to make sure. So there's no increase of density.
Okay, so it's maxing out in what we had allowed.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Are you done?
Sorry, one more. Internal road plan, sidewalk on one side, I think I heard you say?
On both sides.
Both sides.
On the neighbor's side, right when you drive in, that right side, that's kind of just against that side, we would have the sidewalk on the inside of the lake. As soon as you get to where the homes are, it would be on both sides of the road throughout the entire community.
Okay.
Can I just talk a little about sidewalks, because it was brought up, and I don't think that the engineer knows this, but we are going to the city council next meeting to award the bid for the sidewalks that the city is installing. And the city will be installing sidewalks on both sides of Mayfield from the Four Corners up until the area that's just west of the roundabout, because the roundabout will have its own set of sidewalks. So we will come up to the roundabout. And then the applicant here will build the sidewalks in front of his portion, and that will leave Sally Cobb's house and the church for infill sidewalks. And I've already talked to our public works about seeing if we can't do that infill as well, so that we will have our intent is to have a full connectivity all the way up to this park.
Okay.
Okay.
That's terrific. Last thing is on the streetscape that's depicted on our paperwork, does not show any contemplation of bike paths. Are we contemplating any consideration of our biking community that is using Crabapple as sort of a home base for a lot of
the sidewalk along our frontage is a multi-use trail. So it is wider for the bike lanes, and then through the entire community with having them on both sides, it gives you the ability to ride, for either side. The streets are really wide. They're 28 feet wide. Now you can park on them, but I'm a biker myself. It gives you a good bit of room. There's not a dedicated per se, the feel of, the Milton streets is to kind of be, you park on that side, that's where the striping is, but it not to be completely, sectioned out so that it has more of an organic feel to it. So there's not a bike lane per se, but the width of it, and with the availability of sidewalks and the multi-use trail we're doing across both frontages, it does have the provisions for biking in the area.
So I just want to clarify what I heard you say. So the multi-use trail part of it that's on the fringe of
all the frontage, including the new road.
Okay. Including the new internal road.
The connection road that we would be dedicating, and that would be built.
Anything that's not an alleyway, basically.
So the internal, like all these roads internal here, all of these would have sidewalks on both sides. It would be 5-foot sidewalks. The entire frontage here, and then the new road that's being built by the city would have the multi-use trail, because that's where you'd be going to.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
I just got one quick question. When's that Charlotte Road extension going to be done? What's the time frame on that road?
Well, as I said, they're in design, and once the design is done, then they will firm up all the right-of-way with the owners, and then they'll go into construction plans, and then they'll go out to bid, and then they'll construct it. So,
18 months?
yeah, something like that. But we have the money in place. It's the top project with the T-SPLOS funds. The Public Works Department is ready to go as soon as they can. Everyone is most anxious for this road, and it will really, I think, alleviate a lot, because you'll be able to go with no lights around the roundabout there and then go up, take a right at Charlotte, and then join up at the Birmingham roundabout. Keep moving. Everything keeps moving, and then you move right across front of our building over to the new roundabout at Crabapple. So it will be just an even flow of traffic, and that was the intent.
And what's the time frame once you get your LDP to completion?
You're talking roughly about 15 months to have a first house. And so it's a pretty long process, from here, maybe 17, 16, 17, 18 months.
Okay.
It's single-phase development. This is not build it as they come. We're going to build this project.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving through it, yes.
Okay. There was a question from the community about tree save or recompense. Is there a recompense that's required with some of the clearing that's done?
Oh, yes. Always. For sure. I mean, there's not
going to be able to replant on the site because of the density of the development.
There's a lot of rooms to replant in here with the courtyards, and we're facing a lot of the open space. There's not a ton. We had our arborists go out. There's not a lot of specimen trees, but we still have recompense. We're going to have to plant a lot of trees, street trees, and off-site in-lot trees as well for the development.
Okay. I had a question about, so at the top of the property, how far is it to the school, basically to the edge of your property, to the school?
To the building?
To the school, yeah, to the building, I guess.
The one that's up here, like that, I guess that's the middle, maybe? Is the middle or the high?
Elementary, because I was looking at the aerial.
The elementary's to the left, like more over here. I mean, I just saw an aerial. I mean, if we wanted to kind of guesstimate, I mean, one of the buildings is pretty far. The other building is maybe 200? Yeah, 200, the closest one, I would imagine.
So I know you said there's still going to be some trees that are remaining on your property that will be buffering between your property and the school?
Yeah, there's not a lot of that area is cleared today. It does have one ring of existing trees that are okay for screening, but we would be coming back to, in the same way the school may not want to see us, we would be the same. Our residents don't want to see the school too. So we would be coming back and adding screening as well to our property line. And because a lot of our property line that does not have a lot of trees. And so we'd be adding a lot of the evergreen stuff back to that property line, because that's a big concern. And where that trail comes up, the sidewalk that we're connecting to the school, that's the Fulton County public easement for sewer. And so we're talking about running along that line. It just made sense.
So then from your property, will you still be able to see the school, or will it be fully screened?
I mean, you could see it, but the intent would be to screen it heavily.
Okay.
Because we see it the same way the school may, see it, is that, we want to screen it from the school as well, just because the school is a pretty big building.
Mm-hmm. And then the commercial property, so are you guys developing that commercial? No.
No. That commercial, whether or not that commercial would be part of a bigger plan, we just want to make sure that the mixed use of that feel of that corner on the other side of the new road is in place, because it connects with a lot of other sites that are right there along Mayfield. And so that is a standalone deal. I mean, who knows, at the end of the day, they may do something small there, but it would be small. The way I think everybody was looking at it is, in a mixture of uses, the context of the properties around it, it makes sense for it to be part of something more viable, there. But it will not be homes. It will be some type of retail restaurants destination.
But you guys will still own the rights to that area. You own that property.
I think I could get that to talk about it, but that commercial would be sold to a commercial developer, so that they could do something, the Crabapple style commercial.
Okay.
And so we would those rights would go to the commercial, and then they would have to come before your DRB and staff and, get everything approved. So they'd have a long road, but that would be the intent, is that they would come up with something cool for that site.
Right. There's a series of small little lots to the west of Charlotte Drive Extension, and the intent, or at least our encouragement to the landowners along there is to combine lots. So that's where we're encouraging, and so we hope that will come to fruition.
I think most of my questions have been asked by Commissioner, excuse me, Paul, but on the townhouses, what is the length on these are questions that have come before, length of the driveways on the townhomes?
20.
How many cars?
Off the alley, they range between 18 and 22, depending on where it is. And so enough to be able to fit a car and use the garage too.
Okay, so one car, basically.
Two side by side.
If I'm visiting.
You could be two side by side on the driveway if you're visiting.
Okay. The other question I have is for staff. Was there any, normally we have a study on the estimated number of children and the supply in the schools, and has there been any study of that done?
No, it's not required. That would be for a rezoning, but this area is already zoned, and this is a subdivision plan, so there's no requirement for that. No, correct.
That's all.
Let me tag off of that. So, in conjunction with this, is there a corresponding traffic study that had to be done, or it was done?
Did transportation require that?
So as part of our land disturbance, which we'd be entering into, we have to work with Carter and Sarah to analyze that entire area, because they're just now, like, as you guys know, with the roundabout and everything, and we're going to have to run through the whole gamut with your transportation department. I just know that we've already had preliminary discussions about what's going to be required, and so I know the improvements that we have coming for us is going to be those turn lanes. And we really want to see that road come in. They promised me, I told them that we were going to have a home up first, and they said, no, we'll have the road up first. So I challenged them.
Okay, good. Any questions? As you know, this isn't a rezoning, so we're not going to do motions and voting or anything. So any other questions?
I've got one more. Okay. I'm sorry. Sure. On the, it looks like lot 20, which is one of the homes that's closest to the lake. It looks like that's actually encroaching into the stream buffer. 21. I'm sorry, 21. 21.
Mm-hmm. So the lot line, the invisible lot line, that person may own, it's not a buffer, it's the impervious setback. And so that person may own into that impervious setback, but the house would not be in that. Okay. Those are overlooking that stream buffer. Those are going to be really cool lots.
Okay, that's all I had.
All right. Anything else? All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Presentation.
Thank you.
Can we take just a 2-minute break? I'm going to use the restroom.
Oh, okay. Oh, let's see. Now, how are we? That's the beginning, right? Yeah.
Everything you need?
Oh, there we are.
And so if you want to switch, I think you'll probably be on the overhead.
Yeah, so you'll, oh, okay. So, yeah.
I was thinking too. It's like, why would we want it given to us? Keep it.
Keep it. Are you going to ever drive down there?
Yeah. No.
I'll show you.
That's my
like you said, I mean, I guess, you'd have to better understand this volume what's the year-to-year
What's that going to cost the city?
Yes, so I mean,
Do we have a pond person?
Yeah.
I mean, then we're responsible for floods. I mean, there's going to be floods,
I mean, yeah, I guess when you look at what the cost to remediate it is.
I was flipping through this, I was like, oh my God.
If we turn it, say if they donated it to us and then we did all that work in the park,
That's great.
you know.
To me, it's like the
is that-
music man.
How many years does that buy
They're
us?
selling us
These are
extras. You take care of it. No, I mean, and our people will be able to use it, and you can pay, and the HOA doesn't have to take care of it,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, oh man, that's a great deal for
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Hey, I got a park, I don't have to pay for it. Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see what we got here.
I guess, we were planning on.
What's that?
That's what we were saying, but what's the annual cost of the city to maintain?
Okay, great, thank you.
If they do all these improvements, it won't be too much.
You still got to cut it. You still got to cut it.
I get that, yeah. Ready?
Yeah, are we all here?
Oh, no, hold on, we're waiting on Samik. Hold on,
Right,
sorry, I didn't
yeah,
see him.
it seemed, like somebody was.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna move. I'm gonna have a free lake out my back.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting one of them ones right overlooking it.
Yeah.
Bring my little boat, my little pontoon boat.
Lake Windward.
So the jet skis out then?
Connie, you think maybe midnight? Forecast?
She has told us that this is, she's got this streamline, right?
Streamline, I'll try to do it in 45, and then moving on to questions.
So it'll be midnight.
So it's on you.
We'll do highlights.
Okay.
All right.
Great. All right, good evening. I'm Michelle McIntosh Ross with Community Development, and we're here with the draft tree ordinance revision. I think it was last year around this time, October, so we started exploring revising the current tree ordinance, and we brought Connie Head on board to start looking at our ordinance. We worked with a stakeholder group. We've had 7 meetings. We met several times over at the community place, and before that, at Old City Hall, to work on how we were going to revise the tree ordinance. We got our first draft back in May, and we've had several iterations with the stakeholder committee. We're on draft 4. So we are here with Connie Head to present that. Last week, this time, we had a public information meeting, and this presentation was given then, and we had some questions and concerns. They were all resolved at that meeting. So we are here to have you hear the presentation and to have you review our revised tree ordinance. Thank you. Here's Connie Head.
Well, thank you. Good evening. I will go through my presentation. I will try to give you just the highlights, so we may go through some of the slides rather quickly. But a lot of you I know are familiar with this draft ordinance already. At the end of the presentation, then, I want to talk about just a couple of the handouts that you just received. There were a few changes from last week. You received version 4.1. I now have version 4.2. So I just wanted to tell you about there's really just 3 major changes, things that are significant. Much of it was just editing of corrections and things such as that. So with that, I'll get started. So Michelle went through this. We've completed the review of the current regulations, plans, and policies, and had our stakeholder meetings. I've done some visual assessments of sites within the community, and we had the public input meeting. So here we are today. And after this meeting, you all will make decisions on whether to move forward to council. So that's where we're at this point. I wanted to just show these few slides of a quick tour of some of the things I saw here in Milton, just to make you aware of why some of the provisions are in the ordinance. So a lot of your sites do start out as wooded sites. Some start out as pasture land. Some are just mixed with scattered trees. And here you see a development that was in progress at the time, and there's great planting areas for street trees along this new street, and the ordinance as it is today, the draft, recommends that trees be planted on private property within road frontages. Those will function as street trees, and at maturity, they're going to shade pavement and sidewalk, and that to me is just a really important piece of this. We want trees in places where they're going to do the most good, where they're going to function well. Here's a home construction site with concrete contamination of the soil, and that certainly raises the pH and is not good for tree growth. The soil is also very compacted, and that is also very unsuitable for tree survival and growth. So this is one of the things we're trying to eliminate or fix if it does occur. Here you see some street trees planted. These are red maples. They're in narrow tree lawns, and really the trees are in beautiful, absolutely beautiful trees. And the size of the tree lawn really is minimal here. It's about 3 feet, it looks like. It should be probably about 5. And the mulch is improper, should not be piled up around the trunk. So we see this in every community where a little bit of tweaking of the standards needs to occur to improve the quality of the trees that are out there. So in the ordinance, we've stated the community forest vision for the City of Milton's community forest is a natural and extensive tree canopy that provides significant and irreplaceable value to your quality of life. And then the city is committed to managing its community forest to continually improve the quantity and the quality of this vital green infrastructure. And that's really, truly what it is green infrastructure. One of the basic, I guess you'd say, tenets of the draft ordinance is that there must be community participation in maintaining tree cover. Everyone should contribute. Tree functions and benefits are certainly spread across property boundaries, and all property owners then share the benefits that are provided by their neighbors' trees and the trees throughout their neighborhood and then throughout the city. So in this draft ordinance, all property owners have been given a role in and responsibility for maintaining tree canopy cover. Since you have so much residential property, certainly we're focusing on residential property as well as the non-residential. So the goals that were set forth in the ordinance, and these are goals, are no net loss of tree canopy cover and achieving a minimum of 60% tree canopy cover by 2033. And the canopy will be measured at least every 5 years, probably more often than that, to evaluate the effectiveness of the tree ordinance and your other programs and policies that affect trees. So you currently have 57% tree canopy, 57 to 58, depending on how you count the smaller shrubs and the smaller trees. 23% grass and pasture, which of course is better than pavement, but still you get a lot of runoff off of grass and pasture. And 13% impervious surface, and that is actually relatively low for a community and is really good. And that number needs to stay down while the tree canopy number needs to stay the same or go up a little bit. So just a couple of examples of what tree canopy looks like and the amounts. Here's a site that was developed in the circled area, and if we pull into that, I counted here about 12% tree canopy cover using Fulton County GIS. This is a 1.3 acre site. Here's another site that's already developed, and you can see it's very wooded. This site, I measured as 81% tree canopy cover. This is a 4 acre site. So certainly large amounts of tree canopy are possible. So that's quite a difference from 12 to 81%. And in your existing ordinance, this is what I found when I did calculations, is that with your existing requirements, the amount of tree canopy can vary greatly from one site to the next using the tree density unit system. That's why this ordinance proposes to use tree canopy cover. So the ordinance is applicable to all real property in the city of Milton and any activity that requires a permit or approval, including your land disturbance, building, demolition, right-of-way encroachment permits, tree removal permits, certificate of occupancy, and any of the approvals for minor plat, conceptual plan approval, and final plat approval. And then all protected trees. And I'll give you the rundown on what those protected trees are in just a moment. The trees and activities that are exempt are those trees that pose an imminent threat or are being removed or pruned under emergency conditions, commercial tree nurseries and tree farms, timber harvesting with a few conditions, trees removed or directed to be removed by municipal, county, state, or federal authorities, trees removed or pruned by utility companies, except that their operations must comply with the standards that are included in the Tree Conservation Manual. And that's particularly pruning standards for proper pruning. And then, as otherwise stated in the ordinance, there are some other exemptions. So what the tree canopy conservation ordinance proposes to do is to manage canopy through identifying trees of special value, establishing priority areas for tree conservation and planting, establishing then minimum tree canopy cover requirements for lots and larger sites with multiple lots and zoning districts, and then tree removal permitting and replacement for developed properties, and for those properties that are being developed, that are currently undeveloped, a tree canopy plan approval and tree canopy requirements. So these are the areas that the ordinance focuses on to maintain and manage your tree canopy. So protected trees, those are any trees growing on city property, any tree 6 inches diameter and greater on developed properties, trees 2 inches and greater on undeveloped properties, anything that's been conserved or planted to meet tree canopy requirements, and then specimen and heritage trees. Those are all protected trees. Now, in your existing ordinance, your protected trees, more or less, for developed residential property are 15 inches and greater. So this is a change. There's a drop down to 6 inches here. Many of the smaller trees on a site, if they're conserved, will withstand the construction activity better. So we want to get a little bit lower down. They will also be the trees that can be well protected and will grow up and are, will be well established. So sometimes once they get to 15, they get a little, some trees can get a little ragged. So specimen trees, those are healthy trees in these diameter categories. And we said pine trees 27 inches and greater, hardwood, and then other softwood trees that are 24, 18, or 8, depending on their height class. And there's 3 height classes, small, medium, and large. Or any tree that's used as a focal point by a builder. These trees, if conserved, are going to be given 10% tree canopy cover bonus. But if they are removed, they must be replaced at 120%. And if they're removed without approval, at 400%. So 4 times the tree canopy that was removed has to be replaced. We included heritage trees because those are trees that might not fit a diameter category, but instead they're outstanding in their age or their size. They have some landmark recognition throughout the community or some historical association. And these might also be champion trees, Georgia champion trees, or they might be official landmark and historic trees that are designated by the Georgia Urban Forest Council. They're given a 20% tree canopy cover bonus, and if approved for removal, they have to be replaced at 140%, so an extra 40% tree canopy. If they're removed without approval, that's 800%. So the tree canopy priority areas are basically those areas that you already require through the zoning ordinance, the planting or the conservation of trees. And this includes rural view sheds, road frontages, those would be your street trees, parking lot trees in the landscape islands and around the perimeter, in landscape strips, in buffers. And of course, required minimum yards are good locations for the conservation and establishment of trees. So I'm going to just talk about 2 of these areas, parking lots and the landscape strips. In parking lots, 60% tree canopy cover would be required, and that's 1 large or medium tree for every 6 spaces. No space can be greater than 60 feet from a tree. There's minimum open soil surface areas that are required for each one of these trees so that they have enough space to grow and thrive. Because another one of the main tenets of this ordinance is to do it right the first time. Give them plenty of space go through all the effort and then the tree struggles. So everyone can be successful. So the minimum open soil surface area, though, could be reduced if up to 50% of the area is permeable pavement, structural soils, or suspended pavement systems. Trees in parking lots really do so much for us. And again, this is one of those areas where trees have a really high function. They reduce ground level ozone formation by cooling cars and cooling the ambient temperature, and then stormwater runoff. They really, really reduce stormwater runoff. And most parking lots don't have enough trees. So landscape strips. Again, came basically from the zoning ordinance. 1 tree for every 30 feet if they're 25 feet wide or less. 1 tree for every 20 feet if greater than 25 feet wide. 60% coverage is again required. And the spacing must generally conform to tree placement standards in the Tree Conservation Manual. However, they can be clumped or another spacing used if approved by the city arborist. So minimum tree canopy cover requirements come into play for both developed and undeveloped properties in different ways. So let's talk about those. There's a table in the ordinance, and this is only just a subset of the zoning districts. But these are the minimum tree canopy cover requirements. And you can see they range anywhere from 0 on up to 60%. Most of your property, a lot of your property, I think is it 19,000 acres or something like that? A lot of your property is the AG1 zoning district, and that's the 60%. But we do have a couple of different cases in here. If the residential lot is less than an acre, regardless of the zoning district, we've dropped that to 40%. If they're less than a third acre, then 20%. If they're greater than 1.5 acre and they have documented agricultural land use, or are an equestrian estate, or are intended for a horse farm, then we'll drop that to 0, give a waiver of the tree canopy cover requirement. Residential lots that are greater than 1.5 acre that have had 25% or less canopy on them for the past 10 years, the tree canopy requirement is cut in half for those. So for developed properties, the amount of tree canopy on that property is what's there at the adoption of this ordinance. So currently what's existing. A tree removal permit is required to remove any protected trees, and those are 6 inches DBH and up. If it has, a replacement is required if the site has less than the minimum. So if you want to remove a tree from one area of the site, you're asked to replace it on another part of the site, that same amount of tree canopy cover. And of course, conservation and planting in those priority areas would be a focus. And alternative compliance may be used with city arborist approval. If there's just no way to get that canopy back on the property in a replacement, the property owner could use the tree bank or the tree canopy fund. So conditions under which removal is permitted is if the tree's dead or unhealthy and has some other major health problem, at risk for whole or partial tree failure, in an unresolvable conflict with infrastructure or clearance, the litter produced by the tree creates an unsafe condition, or the tree is located such that the desired use of the property or that portion of the property is not possible without removal. And conditions under which removal is not permitted are for sign installation, clearance, or visibility because of just normal leaf or fruit litter, to increase the amount of turf or formal landscaping on the site, or to increase the amount of impervious surface without an approved tree canopy plan. So if the site is going to be redeveloped, then it has to go according to the undeveloped property regulations. So for tree replacement, it's 100% for non-specimen and non-heritage trees, 120 for the specimen, and then 140 for the heritage. And again, alternative compliance may be used. So I threw this in here just to say, okay, how do we measure tree canopy cover? And it's very simple. You measure diameter of the crown in one direction, then in the and in the widest direction, and then in a perpendicular direction. You add those two together, get an average diameter. You divide that in half to get an average radius, and multiply by pi, 3.14. You get the square foot area. In a minute, I've got a little example of that. So that's for developed properties. Now, for undeveloped properties, the amount required upon development is the amount outside of the buildable area, or the minimum that you saw on that chart, whichever is greater. No protected trees may be removed, and those are 2 inches and greater, without a tree canopy plan. All trees outside of the buildable area must be conserved. And those priority areas come into play also. And the conservation and planting in priority areas must be done whether or not the site meets the minimum. And again, specimen and heritage trees removed must be replaced at 120 and 140%, again, regardless of whether the site meets the minimum. And alternative compliance may be used. So the buildable area is that area where structures and improvements are going to be placed and where trees may be removed, and within 60 feet of the footprint of a building, pool, or other structure where there's going to be major equipment moving around in that area. But the ordinance does state that within the first 30 feet of that 60 feet, no trees will be given credit, but within 30 to 60 feet, if the trees can be properly protected, then they will be given credit. So within 30 feet also of edges of a road, driveway, walkway, patio, or other impervious surface, and within the footprint of the septic tank lines and primary drain field. So other than that, the trees must remain. So for trees that have to be planted, the system that's been developed is to give them credit at the time of planting for their mature spread. And we've changed the terminology in the from 4.1 to 4.2. So instead of the very small, small, medium, and large, we have now very narrow, narrow, wide, and very wide. And so that is the credit that they would receive at the time of planting. But when the actual tree canopy of a conserved tree is less than the standard credit, we don't want to discourage the conservation of trees, so we would give the standard credit to those conserved trees. So again, that's what we would do. If this, in this example, the average diameter is 70 feet, average radius is 35, and that's 38, 46, 47 square feet of tree canopy cover. But if this tree, the average radius was only 20 feet, then the tree canopy cover would be 1256 square feet, and that tree then could get 1,600 square feet instead of the 1256. So, just a relatively simple explanation. This is nothing like the plans we saw here tonight. This is very simplified. But to calculate the tree canopy cover for a development or for a site, we would look at, if you can see up in this area here, we have a forested area with 15,000 square feet. This is a 1 acre site that I was using for an example. We have a specimen tree here with 3,200 square feet, and we're giving it a 10% bonus, so that's an additional 320 square feet. Here there was a very wide maturing tree with 750 square feet, but as I just mentioned, it would get the standard credit, so it would get 1,600 square feet right here. And then 4 street trees are to be planted, and again, they would have a very wide canopy. These would be oak trees or something similar, and they would each be given 1,600 square feet. So if you add all of those up, you get 26,520 square feet. If you divide that by the 43,560, you're going to get 61% tree canopy cover on this site. So that's the basic, very simplified calculation for tree canopy cover on a site. So those trees that are conserved have to be protected within the tree protection zone, and tree roots must be protected within the critical root zone. And I've got a graphic for you on that in a minute. So for the critical root zone for existing trees, it's the ground surface and that soil area 24 inches deep within either the drip line or the circular area of 1.5 feet for every 1 inch in diameter, whichever is larger. New trees also have to be protected in that 24-inch deep area. We don't want any soil compaction because trees will not thrive in that. So whatever their open soil surface area required, that would be the area of the critical root zone, or within the drip line, or calculated as above, whichever is larger. So it's basically going to be that open soil surface area that's required. So a couple of examples here. In this example, the radius of 1.5 feet for every 1 inch DBH is actually right here, but it is smaller than the drip line. the drip line being the green line. So this red line would be the critical root zone here. In the second example, the radius of 1.5 feet for every 1 inch DBH is actually larger than the drip line. It's out to here. So here's the drip line. And so this would be the critical root zone. So you can see it's outside the drip line here. In the upper one, it's right at the drip line. And that completely depends upon the size of that trunk. And the tree protection zone, again, includes this whole area, 24 inches deep within the drip line or the edge of the critical root zone. And then the whole tree. That's the tree protection zone, is the entire tree. Trunk, limbs, and all. Tree protection would be required out here at the critical root zone with signage placed there. So that's tree protection. All right. So for undeveloped properties, a tree canopy plan has to be submitted and approved prior to the approval of any other development permit. And conformance with all aspects of that approved tree canopy plan are required prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued. A tree protection plan would also be included for trees proposed for conservation and a tree planting and maintenance plan for trees to be established. This can all be one plan if you can read it. You know, if it's clear enough on that single plan, they can all be included on the same piece of paper. So alternative compliance, as I mentioned, is either the tree bank or the tree canopy fund. You currently have those two options now, but we've kind of beefed up the tree bank in this new revised ordinance. The tree bank can be used for up to 50% of the required tree canopy cover. Of course, this is all with arborist approval. And also an individual property owner that has at least 18,000 square feet or greater of open area can register their property as a tree bank and get some free trees. They can register as a tree bank, and if there's a development that needs to plant trees on another site, then they could plant them on this site. The tree planting and maintenance plan would be required, and that would be provided by the developer. The developer bears all the costs for tree planting, but the tree maintenance then and protection would be the responsibility of the tree bank owner. The tree canopy fund could be used for up to 30% of the required tree canopy cover with approval. And again, the tree canopy value should be established in the city's fee schedule and based upon an annually calculated cost to purchase, plant, install, and guarantee a large maturing tree. The tree canopy fund expenditures can be used to purchase, install, maintain trees on public property and pay for any community forestry management activities that are designed to sustain, increase, and improve the tree canopy cover and meet the goals as stated at the beginning of the ordinance. So accompanying the tree ordinance is the tree conservation manual that really sets out the administrative and arboricultural standards for the tree ordinance compliance. And it also includes the applicability and exemptions chart, the definitions, which are also included in the ordinance. And probably there will be only one set of those included in your UDC when everything's incorporated into the UDC. It has a tree species list, will have standard procedures, forms, and checklists, and then illustrations and construction details. And that may be modified as necessary with approval of the Director of Community Development. The arboriculture, there's a whole list of the forms and checklists which are not developed yet because it's not been adopted yet or approved yet. But the arboricultural standards include tree protection, establishment, and maintenance. So within each one of those, there's a number of activities that are included in there and standards for those. So just to finish up, there's some other provisions. I've hit the highlights here, but some of the other provisions are city tree management provisions that say the protection of city trees are required. City has the right to plant and maintain trees, and that's established there. And also establishes the city's right to acquire or remove, if necessary, any unsafe trees on private property. That's if they're threatening the public right-of-way. If they're threatening the public on primarily leaning over the street or that sort of thing, if they can't just be pruned, then the city may ask for them to be removed. If they're not removed, the city may go in and remove those. Variance procedures are the same as with other city ordinances, and they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Appeals of the city arborist decisions are first made to the Director of Community Development and then to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Enforcement includes inspections, a notice of violation, stop work orders, and then fines and penalties. And there are basically 3 inspections that occur, one prior to the approval of a tree removal permit or plan or planting and maintenance plan, then after installation of any tree protection measures and before any land disturbance or right-of-way encroachment occurs, and then prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or a final plat approval. Inspections may be done periodically as necessary, and then 1 and 3 years after project completion to make sure trees are still living and trees are out there. The fines are standard as for most other ordinances within the city, up to $1,000 per day per tree. Each tree and each day is a separate offense. No maximum limit. Replacement of canopy may be required. Reimbursement for the appraised value of a city tree that's damaged may also be required. Offenses are tried in Milton Municipal Court, and fines are deposited into the tree canopy fund. So to get a certificate of occupancy, all tree ordinance requirements have to be met, and the site has to conform to the tree plan. All trees must be planted, although a temporary CO may be issued if a landscape performance bond has been submitted. And then all penalties assessed for any violations have to be paid, and tree fund payments must also be paid. The landscape performance bond may be required when trees cannot be planted due to seasonal limitations. Trees must be planted within 1 year of the issuance of the bond. And then the bond is returned after successful planting or used by the city, if not completed, to plant the trees in a tree bank or city property. And then timber harvesting notification is fairly standard. No tree removal permit or tree canopy plan is required, but a notification is required. And clear cutting is allowed only in the AG1 zoning district, and a 50-foot undisturbed buffer is required around the perimeter where the timber harvesting is to occur. If a tree canopy plan is submitted with the notification, then other development permits may be granted after the harvest is completed. But if no plan is submitted, the site's not eligible for development permits for 5 years after harvest is complete. So the development of this ordinance, and these are not developing land principles, this is development of the ordinance. Tree conservation was a very high priority. And the conservation or placement of trees in these very high priority areas is a major focus of this ordinance. As I mentioned, activities required by the ordinance have to be done in a quality manner to promote tree health and growth and reduce maintenance and replacement costs. That helps everybody. And flexibility in the ways property owners can contribute to tree canopy cover is very important. And the role of the city arborist is key there, because you cannot write an ordinance that covers every single case that you would find on the multiple properties that you've got here in town. So you have to try to hit the high points in the ordinance, and then there has to be some interpretation. So there will always be some of that. I also wanted to say that this is definitely a living document. I know of ordinances that are adopted and put into place, and 3 months later they have to tweak something because there was some unintended outcome or the language just wasn't quite right. But I recommend that every year you really look at your ordinance, and it is a framework that's going to help you in achieving your goals. You want it to achieve your goals. So you might find some other desirable approaches or some things that you just don't like about it. And so I think it's important to regularly, revisit it and assess how well it's meeting your goals. How'd I do on that? Yes, and I do want to talk about the changes, but I'll...
Connie, before you leave, could you go back at the beginning? It's about the third or fourth, where it's got the sidewalk and the tree and the street. You said they were red maples.
Yes. Okay, let me do this. And we'll go up there. Let's see, I think it was that one.
No, there we are.
That's it?
Now, not being an arborist, on red maples,
yes.
How is the root system? And I'm talking real concerned, not concerned about it, I mean, in all cases. And I saw it happen in my hometown, and I think I spoke to you in one of the meetings before, that they didn't have a person like you. So wise, they just planted the trees. And within 5 years, the roots had begun to get into the sidewalks. Sidewalks were buckling.
Yes.
So not only did they cut the trees down, they had to come back and redo all the sidewalks.
There's a couple of problems there, and the first is the tree lawn not being wide enough. But probably the biggest issue there is that the soil was very compacted. Roots stay fairly close to the surface, and then they're going to impact the soil much better. They'll penetrate a lot better in a very aerated soil. There are things such as root barriers that can be placed along that edge between the grassy tree lawn and the sidewalk. But I have actually seen tree roots growing up and over those. So I did not include that in here. I know in Decatur when we did a tree inventory, in their tree wells, they had the root barriers on all four sides, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess. So the best thing is well aerated soil.
Well, I thought maybe red maples were particularly
They're particularly sensitive to compaction.
Are they?
And they don't penetrate very well, yes. And I've seen a lot of issues with red maples. It's one of the reasons why in the tree species list that I somewhat limited where red maples can be planted. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that part, but
yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention just this, the significant changes from 4.1 to 4.2, and just mention the 3 changes that I made that were reflected in this presentation. And one was, of course, to correct the variance procedure, and that goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I had that to the Planning Commission, so scratch that. And the tree canopy cover requirements, when a developed property requests a building permit, that activity that they're requesting the building permit for may or may not affect any trees. So I did include a little section that said, for improvements that will substantially affect the tree canopy cover on the site. I thought that was important. Because there's no need to have a tree canopy plan and have to have the minimum tree canopy cover requirement if you're just doing a small patio or something that's not affecting any trees. And then on the third box there, from discussions over the last couple of weeks with the stakeholders, we increased the minimum number of years that a site has to be a pasture without trees to 10 years from 5. And then we also changed, and this is both for developed and undeveloped properties. I just pulled the section from undeveloped properties. And this is for land that's 1.5 acres or greater that will be used for an equestrian estate, a horse farm, or other agricultural use. We're going to put a moratorium on development permits, but that just seemed to be really discouraging the development of those types of lots. So we scratched all that, and we just said a waiver of minimum tree canopy cover requirements would be assigned to the property. But if after a couple of years, 2 years, that site is not used as an equestrian estate or a horse farm or agricultural use, then the waiver becomes invalid, and the city would issue the property owner a notice of noncompliance, and they would have to reforest within 1 year. So those were the 3 major changes in provisions. You all also asked for some case studies. I don't know that you want me to go through this tonight, but I did develop 2 case studies that I think would be really good for you all to read through. And one was for a developed property and for protected tree removal, and I'm happy to go through it if you want me to. And the second was for an undeveloped property, and I just gave you some general requirements, what would be required in the current tree ordinance, and then how that would differ from what's currently required. So I don't know if this is a lot to read through, and I know you're just getting it tonight, so.
Could you, because that was like the one question that I kind of had.
Yes, and thank you for the question, because that's really important. Yeah.
Well, I guess real quick, do we have any public comment, Kathy? Just curious. No, okay. All right. So yeah, I guess that was my one question. Could you walk me through the current process removing 10, 20 trees now and then in the future?
All right. I'll talk to you about what this is right now. I'll just
Okay.
kind of go through this and I'll highlight. But I just took a sample site that was, say, 1.8 acres in size that currently has 68% tree canopy cover on it. And it had 4 street trees. So the property owner wanted to remove, and this is my just made up sample study here, a group of trees from a corner of the property to get more sun for a garden. Okay. The area is adjacent to the most open portion of the property and gets the afternoon sun. So this would require the removal of that 10-inch street tree and an additional 19 trees in a large grouping. 14 of those are 6 inches and greater. So this is under the proposed ordinance. 5 are smaller. And 1 is a large sweet gum tree that would normally be a specimen tree, but it's an unhealthy tree. So a property owner would then have to apply for a tree removal permit to remove any tree 6 inches and greater. And that's 15 trees total in this case. So the city arborist receives the application, goes out there and takes a look. And in this case, the property owner is proposing removing 5875, say, square feet of tree canopy cover. The site would still have enough remaining cover that would meet the minimum requirement of 60%, so no replacements required. So the only cost would be for a permit. I gave you kind of my suggested fee schedule there. It would be $25 per tree up to $150 maximum. So that would be the only cost. Now, if
Okay, so if they will remove 4 trees or 20 trees, it's $150. Or six trees
or 20 trees.
$150.
You all can put a
That's
limit
it.
on your permit as to the number of trees that
Okay.
permit would apply to.
Okay.
But we haven't contemplated that right now.
Right.
Okay.
I just put it in as a 150 maximum.
Okay.
In the recommended amount that I gave you. If that property instead had only 47% tree canopy to begin with, then the resulting canopy after the removal of those trees would only be about 39.5%. That doesn't meet the minimum, and they would have to replace that amount of tree canopy cover to come up to the 60% requirement for the site.
Not the 47%? They'd have to go all the way up to 60%?
They have to, I'm sorry. No, they would have to go back up to the 47.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I misspoke there. They would have to go back up to the 47 and replace that amount of tree canopy. So additional costs would be for just planting some additional trees. Now, if the site had the same cover, but that sweet gum tree met the requirements for a specimen tree, they would have to replace, they would have to add, let's say it would be 4,500 square feet instead of 3,750. So they'd have to replace that at 120%. So I gave just a combination of trees that would meet that requirement, 6,700 square feet of actual replacement to replace the 6,625 square feet. We're starting at 47. They take out the same trees, but one is a specimen. They just have to plant some extra trees on that.
But they'd be happy to get rid of that sweet gum.
I know, but it could be a specimen. Could be a beautiful sweet gum. This property could also register as a tree bank and have those trees planted by a developer. So if at that time they needed to plant those trees and they were a tree bank and someone was wanting to plant trees there, then they could eliminate that cost of planting. So that's one option. And that property owner, if those trees that they had to replace wouldn't fit anywhere else on the property, they could use the tree bank and plant them somewhere else, or the tree canopy fund and pay for that. So that was case 1. Case 2, I had a little more detail on, and that's for an undeveloped property. And let me just go through this quickly. If it's a 37-acre undeveloped property in the AG1 zoning district with a mix of pasture and scattered trees, a little bit of woodland, current canopy is 53%. And the property owner would like to put in 15 lots of 2 acres in size. The entire site and each lot are required to have 60% tree canopy cover, except some of those lots are in areas that were just pasture. So that would in fact be cut in half. There'd only be 30% requirement on those lots. But because of that, and the overall site needing 60%, there'll have to be a little additional trees, tree canopy cover planted in the common areas to make sure that that whole site comes up to 60%. A tree canopy plan would have to be submitted here. A tree protection plan. If rural view sheds were required, then those would also be eligible for tree canopy cover credit. Anything that's required along the road frontages and buffers and landscape islands and strips, all eligible for tree canopy cover credit. So on this, the maximum amount of very wide trees, these are the largest spreading trees, are oak trees, that would have to be planted on a 2-acre lot that was pasture prior to development would be about 16 trees. All right. I put a range of costs there. You know, generally we say a large tree, a 4-inch caliper tree for sure, is going to cost you for purchase and planting and maintenance on that tree and guarantee and all of that, about $500. But I think generally you can look at a range from $150 to $500, depending on who's planting it. If you're doing it yourself, just buying the tree and putting it in the ground. So the cost would range, therefore, from around, say, $2,400 on up to $8,000 for those trees, depending on what kind of trees you're putting in and what size.
And Connie, remind me, it's the calculation for the canopy that they're going to get is based on how many years of growth?
It is based on the tree as it reaches maturity.
Okay.
So some trees that might be 15 years, some it might be 25 years.
Okay. So depending on what their tree selection is.
That's correct. That's correct. And those numbers have been based on information, from other ordinances, but based upon growth rates of trees that were in semi-open conditions. So you're giving them a generous amount. You're hoping that they get bigger. You're hoping that they get a lot bigger. So it's kind of in the medium range for those trees. And then there's, I put in the scenario that if the site required the 60% tree canopy cover, that would be equivalent to like 1.2 acres of tree canopy and 0.8 acres of open space for a 2-acre site. So I can't really say in this, I just gave a scenario on how many conserved trees you'd have versus having to plant trees. But it would certainly be less on those sites that had some trees. The cost of planting would certainly be less. And there would be recompense plantings required for specimen and heritage trees removed from the site, regardless of whether it meets the minimum tree canopy cover requirements. And again, on this site, as they would develop, they would not be able to disturb any of the trees that are outside of that buildable area. So this also actually ends up saving costs for removal of those trees. And alternative compliance, again, could be approved for a portion of those trees that are required. I put a suggested amount in your suggested fee schedule that you have of about $31.25 for each 100 feet of tree canopy. That's a $500 tree divided by 1,600 square feet. Okay, so that's 0.3125 times 100, $31 per 100 feet of canopy. That would be the tree value. If the site was completely wooded and after building on the site, you had this 52,000 square feet of tree canopy, cost would be zero, except for the development of the tree plan. You currently have to have a tree plan for any of your other, for the current existing ordinance, so that cost is a wash between this ordinance and the current existing ordinance. But I did not see in your fee schedule, your current fee schedule online, that you have any separate fee for review of a tree plan. I'm suggesting that you put that in. So it's on your fee schedule there. $300 for the first acre plus $50 for each additional acre up to $500. So other costs and benefits would include a savings in clearing costs. Keeping the tree canopy means less land disturbed, less potential for soil erosion, reduced soil erosion costs. An additional cost, though, in materials and labors for the installation and monitoring of tree protection fencing around conserved trees and tree groups. And here's where I've got the comparison with the existing ordinance. On this site, 15 tree density units per acre would be required. This would be applicable to both the development site and each lot, and this is with your current ordinance. However, if there were no trees on the lot prior to development, that would be cut in half, 7.5 tree density units per acre. So the number of trees planted on the site would certainly depend on how many trees would be conserved, but it is conceivable that on this 2-acre site, you could conserve 2 trees that are 24 inches in diameter, each given 9.3 units, and they're right there, you've got 18.6 units. So just 2 trees. And of course, trees may also still be required along the road frontages and in rural view sheds. And so the tree canopy cover on the site could be as low as about 9%, if only 2 trees with very large diameters were out there on that site to be conserved. So recompense currently is also required for the specimen trees removed from the site, the same as in the proposed ordinance. That's my comparison, and we could talk about a million different scenarios there because every site is certainly different. And I think there will be some cases where you end up, because of what is built on the property, you may not get the amount of tree canopy that's required on our list. And then you have the alternative for tree banking or the tree canopy fund. But all of the tree canopy cover requirements were developed looking at what are the minimum lot sizes, what are the minimum building sizes that you can put on there, and looking at the required yards, and looking at how much space is left on the site that's open area, and how many trees could fit on that site. So all of those numbers were developed with that in mind.
So quick question. So if I want to go get 10 trees removed, come in here, talk to Mark, but it sounds like the big difference is the canopy cover, your overall canopy cover between what we got now, which is none. I mean, if I'm less than 60% now, I don't have to replant up to 60%.
That is
now.
correct.
So my question is, for anyone new that wants to get a tree removal permit, do they automatically have to get a tree canopy plan as well?
No, not for a developed property, no tree canopy plan. Just a tree removal permit.
So how do you just, Mark goes and just ballparks what our current, so how do they know what our
So
current-
Mark would take a look via GIS at what
But I don't have to pay for it for landowner aid, even though I give them a tree removal permit, I don't have to pay for a tree canopy plan also?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
He would just use GIS.
Cool.
He probably
No,
estimates
sounds good to
based
me.
on what he's already got in
Makes the
file.
tree canopy
Okay.
using GIS.
Okay.
There may be cases where the site is very large, and he may ask the property owner who is submitting the tree removal permit to have an arborist estimate the tree canopy on the site. I think that's an option.
So really the big difference is the 15-inch protected tree versus a 6-inch protected tree, but I feel a little more comfortable now that the maximum the homeowner is going to get dinged is $150.
Right. And they're currently...
Right.
Right now, I think it's probably a great place to start.
Yeah. There currently is no fee for a tree removal permit right now. Yes. So that is an addition, but it's not a huge amount of money. And if they are removing trees, it's going to cost them a whole lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
So this is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to that. I mean, it's still money that has to go out, obviously. So, and the replacement planting is also additional money that has to go out.
So today, do you have to get a tree removal permit if you want to do a 10-inch tree? I mean,
Yeah.
anything under 15 inches, you're good to go. Do you need to get a permit for that?
Your current ordinance says a notification is required.
Okay.
How often that happens, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The rest of the information you have, I won't go through, but you do have an applicability and exemption chart that would be included in there, which explains in a relatively small nutshell what's required.
I have a question. On one of your slides tonight, it was also something that I had marked. Just, Connie, if you could help me understand the language. It says, this has to do with tree canopy and parking lot areas.
Okay.
Where it says, no parking space shall be greater than 60 feet from the trunk of a tree.
That's correct. So 1 tree for every 6 parking spaces means that the way the trees can be staggered, each tree would spread and you'd get your 60% tree canopy cover. So where they're placed is going to be really important. But if you have 1 for every 6 parking spaces, you should not have any more than 60 feet away from a tree. Parking spaces are what, 9 by 18 or something like that, generally speaking? Yeah. So if you have 1 for every 6 parking spaces, that's about 54 feet. So you don't want them clumped all in one area of the site, is what that's basically saying.
Okay. So a new development, like if we go back to the, who did the Coles over on Highway 9?
Orkin?
Was it Orkin? That wasn't what it was called, though, but Sembler.
Oh, Sembler originally, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Sembler development. How different, Kathy, do you think that would look today if we had this in place with the parking lot they've got over there? And they've got trees.
Yeah.
And they've got kind of a internal, connection, streetscape to a certain extent. And it was, populated with trees. But would it be remarkably different, do you think?
Oh, I think so. Mark is here. Mark, do you want to answer that?
Well, there he is.
I'm trying to. What's the question again?
So I'm thinking, Mark, with the Assembler property over on Highway 9, they've got a reasonable tree canopy plan over there for what our standards were before. So if you applied some of the things we're talking about today to that, how different would the Assembler property be today under this new ordinance or this new interpretation?
I don't recall what the parking situation is out similar, but I do think with this new one, we would be a lot more dense than what's out there right now.
A lot more tree density.
Yes, I think with a larger spread. I think we'd have
Maybe larger islands and some of those kinds of things.
Don't know. I'd have to check on the size of the islands, but could potentially be some larger islands, reconfiguration of some of the islands also.
Okay. Thank you.
And trees in these areas can share the space somewhat also.
Okay.
How big is 6 inches? Like that? I mean, is that usually is that usually a protected tree? I mean, that just seems real small.
It is in many communities. And a 6-inch tree would very likely be in the neighborhood of 25, 30 feet tall, at least. It's a substantial tree, actually.
Y'all good? Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think it's great work.
Y'all want to defer it? I just can't.
Yeah, I think we should defer it till January.
Yeah. All right. We good? I guess we need to get a motion with her suggested changes also.
Yeah. So what are we calling it?
That's impressive work.
Okay, I move we adopt the new City of Milton tree ordinance as considered Chapter 60, Kathy, as presented this evening by Connie Head with the additional changes as presented tonight as 4.2.
Yes.
Is that sufficient?
I'll second the motion.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, that's it.
Connie,
Okay, nice work, Connie.
we'd just like to say, I've been to those meetings, not all of them, but you and your committee did, I think, an outstanding job, and you're to be complimented.
Well, thank you all very much. You have been the best city to work with, and I hold you up as an example of the fact that people love trees, including developers. So we had a great group. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, anything else, Kathy, before we adjourn?
I got one.
Paul has one.
Great. So I've just, shoot, now that we've been through our first preliminary plat review, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to comment on these. But I think to a great extent, it's futile. It's nice that we get to give 2 cents on this stuff, but without any requirements, without the ability to make recommendations, I think the teeth that we intended to put in and the purpose that it was intended to serve has been gutted. And I think at some point, we as a committee should recommend reconsideration by mayor and council to go back to what the original recommendation was for the purpose that it was intended. Just say that.
What? Just,
To have a chance to give comments and recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Here you've assembled the community.
Well, we did. I mean, we
Well,
did.
no.
They're just not enforceable.
Right, there's no requirement.
I mean, anything we do isn't enforceable.
Now,
Or it's voluntary.
by happenstance tonight, we saw something that was pretty well contemplated, and it was well vetted by city staff and by the developer. And he answered, 99% of the questions or 100% of the questions that we had, and he addressed many of the concerns of the community.
Yep.
Heaven forbid, it wasn't as well done as that was tonight. All we're doing is wasting time, energy, and breath to, for no outcome other than to say thank you. And I just think that if our intention is to be a first look like we are in so many other things for the city that come before the Planning Commission, what we did tonight on a more complicated, more problematic plat is futile, waste of time. And I think that we need to get back to the point where we can make serious recommendations and ask the developer to be responsible for considering those before they get to the mayor and council. Otherwise, the mayor and council is going to end up asking the same questions that we're asking. We're asking the community to be assembled twice. We're asking staff to have to invest time and energy twice, where the first outcome has no significant purpose. I
don't know if I agree with that. I mean, honestly. I mean, I thought the whole purpose was, like you said, so that there was a little bit more due diligence. So, I mean, just like the woman who came in here and said, I didn't see anything, and it's like, well, they changed 6 years ago,
Right.
I mean, so at least she can't sit there and say the first time it gets before city council that, why is this the first time I'm ever seeing this? I had no opportunity to stand up in front of anyone and
Right.
give any comments other than tonight.
Right.
And so the city council, the only option they have is to defer it or vote right there and not contemplate their comments. At least now, all this is on record. City council can listen to it or not. And the first time they hear this, it won't be the first time that someone from the community has something to say about it.
Yeah, but if there were some significant flaws in that plan tonight,
Yeah. No one would know about it until it went before city council.
Right, but why not take the opportunity to at least suggest to the developer with some requirement to actually physically go do that?
Well, we can. I mean, we can
Right, but-
suggest it just like we can any other suggestion. I mean,
and we talked before the meeting, if something like that did occur, to where it was, even though the developer had a legal right to not put in a sidewalk, and 50 people were in the room, and we were like, there has to be a sidewalk. Do you have the teeth as a community development director to?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And
Okay.
so part of, I think, the relevance of this meeting, aside from letting the people understand, the public understand what exactly is being planned and informing them, is the fact that I'm getting feedback in terms of, have I missed something, or have I misinterpreted something that I can interpret another way to be more responsive to the comments that I hear. It does have to come through me, but I think it's certainly, I thought it was a very important meeting.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, like I said, because I don't disagree at all that it wasn't constructive,
Yeah.
but it was a really good example of a well-thought-out plan. But I shudder to think
They're not all going to be.
a problematic one
Or not.
Yeah.
would
I will say, if there was a problematic one and we were all in agreement,
I think the developer would clearly get the message
Well,
and go back and
I think
work with the
Kathy
city.
would-
Yeah, before they go before the city
What
council.
we're missing is that requirement.
It wouldn't go before city council. That doesn't even go before city council, does it?
No, it goes to the city council at the end as a final plat, after the LDP has already been implemented.
So all kinds of changes could be made.
Well, the process is the preliminary plat process, which comes to you all, and then subsequent to the preliminary plat, an LDP can be issued, a land disturbance permit, based on this preliminary plat. And then subsequent to that, once the roads and the infrastructure are built in according to the LDP, they would then go to the city council for a final plat, which gets recorded downtown and gets approved by the city council. And then at that point, they can then apply for their building permits. That's essentially the process.
Start moving earth then with the LDP.
Correct.
That is correct.
Before, it's actually been before mayor and council.
That's right. The mayor and council don't see it until after the LDP.
Yeah, so
I'm agreeing with Paul.
just food for thought.
I guess that's-
No action has to be taken based off my recommendation tonight at this point in time, but if I'm just saying into the record tonight, if we bump into a lousy example, then we may want to reconsider that. Tonight happened to be a great example of how it's supposed to work, where you've already done the good work, and the developer's done some good work with you.
Right.
But heaven forbid it was not as well done as tonight. There's stuff could happen that could not, might not be very pretty. And I just think that we should revisit the requirement that if there are recommendations that we make, they would have to go back before you for some of those considerations to be resolved prior to it getting an LDP. Just food for thought.
I just told them they're going to deal with it.
Yes.
See y'all later.
Maybe some city council person will represent it, that has intimate knowledge of the planning commission. We can look at it again.
That's right.
Next month.
It's a good point, and we had a perfect presentation tonight, so.
Yeah,
we'll
not
see how it
knowing,
goes.
so I'd make one more comment in the record, not knowing what our planning commission schedules can be between now and the first
I
of
think
the
we're
year.
done, right?
No, I think I saw something for November, I thought.
Will we have a December?
There was something on there for text amendments or something I saw in the paper?
Yes, yes,
okay.
we're doing a couple of text amendments. One is the moratorium that needs to be acted on, and then parking, changing the parking requirements.
So we'll have a December meeting. It'll be, because I don't say we can do our December dinner like after the meeting or something.
Yeah,
If
well,
it's a quick
I'm into November, and we're probably going to have something for, we'll have a text amendment in December, but it should be minimal.
About $500.
Good. Well, I'll still take that
I
opportunity.
haven't seen anything.
They got T-shirts.
I'll still take the
Okay,
opportunity
thank
to
you.
congratulate
Thank you.
our councilman-elect, Peyton Jameson, on his successful step into the city council seat.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for your service
Appreciate it.
to the planning commission.
Thank you.
I second that.
All right.
That's all I had.
Good. Thank you very
We're
much.
not all in favor.
Yeah. Exactly. Even if it's not a majority.
Do we get to vote whether you get to go?
We can motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.